Welcome back to Overdunk, everybody, your favorite competitive Pokemon Unite podcast. My name is Zoinks, joined, as always, by Bridget and a brand new guest. Not exactly new, you've been on the show before, but everyone's favorite content cowboy out here. We got Spragels joining the show. Jake, my friend, how have you been?
I've been great. Thank you for having me, Zoinks. Thank you for having me, Bridget. I'm excited to be here to talk about some hot new Pokemon Unite meta stuff. And yes, your Piplup looks bad. We didn't get that before,
whoa!
right? Now we're on broadcast. We're actually, it's live. Your Piplup looks bad.
All right, perfect. Well, shout out to my favorite people, the audio-only listeners. Hope you're all doing well. And of course, not able to visualize how bad the Piplup looks. Bridget, how have you been?
Your Piplup looks great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It really means the world.
Anytime. I've been pretty good. Watched a lot of Unite this weekend, so I had a good time.
That's good. Yeah, I've been desperately trying to catch up on some of the broadcasts throughout the day, a little bit here and there, but it's been, there's so much to watch, which is exciting. I'm going to be breaking down as much as we possibly can here on this episode, but I feel like before we even get to schedule or top of show, Bridget, are you really sporting a brand new Ditto merch drop right now on broadcast? That's crazy.
I've had this sweater for
fair enough.
I think I got it at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
But yes.
Still, an incredible sweater. Spragels, one of our favorite segments on the episode is every time that we find a piece of Ditto merch online and we do a Ditto merch drop segment. It's our one and only recurring segment on the podcast, but you keep the good ones. That's what I always say. But all right. Everybody, for today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Aeos Cup Play Ons throughout a lot of the different regions. We're going to be talking about OC, Brazil, LATAM, North and South, Europe, and North America, as basically the season has kicked off worldwide, as well as talking a little bit about the Asia Champions League as well, that is still ongoing. They just had their day 3 of, I think, a total of 6 days of various levels of group stage and single elimination brackets. They got different formats in every single region out there as well. But we definitely have a lot to talk about in broad strokes, but also just some exciting stuff when it comes down to Pokemon selection. I think if we got a content cowboy, the master of tier lists himself, I feel like talking about the competitive landscape feels just correct here. But let's start with just a little bit more broad stuff. We finally kicked off the tournaments and everything like that. Jake, you got to work on the broadcast for it. What was your favorite part of this weekend? Watching, we obviously honed in on North America, but anything you can mention. What was your favorite part about this weekend?
I do think it's cool that we have more coverage, right? We have more EU, more NA. I think that's exciting. I think it's really good to have more casters in the space, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it were like in an ideal world, we'd have a broadcast for the qualifiers. We'd have a broadcast. You'd see every single match. Like there would be so many people that would get to work on it. But I do think it's really exciting that a group like Battle Hub is involved. I think that's really cool. I mean, they supported the scene in such a big way, and now they're a big part of it, which I think is very exciting.
Yeah.
And I do love getting to do dumb nonsense with you boys. It's very fun to start the broadcast and accidentally say play ons, and then like we're doing it. We're ready to go. We screwed up.
You didn't know it was an accident? Okay, that is there. I mean,
I thought I watched the beginning of the stream, but I don't know.
We crushed it. If you think it was on purpose, we're nailing it. I don't think we are.
Yeah, it was just one of those fun. They're honestly my favorite things. Is just like a fun accident where instead of saying play-ins, I said play-ons, and I know that is going to be a bit for the rest of the day. So that's always fun. And the chat, people were hyped. Even the people who were like, you had like those annoying people that are just like, just so you know, I hate this and I'm here for the drops. But even those people, I think, got to see a pretty good show. So yeah, I was stoked.
We gotta stop calling for attendance, we gotta stop asking chat, hey, who's all here and what are your intentions? We gotta stop with that message. No more posting that at the start of the show.
That's true. Not a great idea.
Yeah, no, not the best. Bridget, how about you? You said you were watching a ton of Unite. You weren't camping this time, so you had the chance to watch the tournament.
Yes.
What was your favorite part about watching so much Unite this weekend?
Just it being obviously LAIC was like very fun and interesting, but it was really fun to see each region's meta kind of form, see like what teams start to pop up, especially in those like top 4 spots for each region, just because the offseason hasn't really been that long, so I do feel like I'm generally still familiar with who is in each of our Western regions at least. So it was fun to see some familiar faces, some new faces.
Yeah.
And just to kind of see how each of the regions are like playing out and who are like the top players for each.
Yeah, I think I might be similar to you actually for favorite thing. Like I love debuts. Obviously, we get to see, like you mentioned, a lot of familiar faces, kind of some restructured teams and things like that. I have a feeling with the first couple of tournaments, we won't have kind of those locked in rosters that it seems like the organization for the league was kind of hoping for. We'd see all year long. I feel like that's going to take a couple of events until people are fully committed and like, all right, we'll ride with whatever championship points we can earn with this crew. First couple tournaments, most likely going to be some tryout level tournaments, but I think a lot of the rosters that we saw emerge were really exciting. Obviously North America came down for our grand finals of kind of two old favorites in Orange Juicers versus Luminosity. We'll talk about more about that match for sure, but I think Gen 5 kind of emerging in Europe. Obviously a lot of known names, a couple of lesser known names on that roster in total though, but like an all French squad able to push announce the distance was super exciting there. We saw a lot of really cool stuff. LATAM North, obviously, we got new stamina. They seem really good. So I really, really like the start of the season. Always some good energy about it. But let's talk a little bit about the region that we were specifically working on, and obviously the one we talk most about on this podcast, which is North America. We had our top 8 of that. It ended up being the Luminosity Gaming, the LAIC champions, versus the regional champions of last year of Orange Juicers. And it was a pretty intense grand final. Went the full distance, a bracket reset, and then a full best of 3 after that. So congratulations to Spragels and Dupesnacks for casting that entire marathon of an event. It was, yeah, of course. No, we got to give credit where credit's due there. It was an event for sure. But Orange Juicers were able to take it, an absolute nail biter. Spragels, any like thoughts on the grand finals? Obviously LAIC champs, you kind of feel like they were shoo-in to take the title, and they come up a little bit short. But Orange Juicers also look pretty remarkable in their current state. So thoughts on those two squads in grand finals?
Yeah, I mean, you of course expected LG to be there. I don't think anyone expected Orange Juicers. We all know they're a great team. I don't think anyone thinks Orange Juicers is not a fantastic team. But when you saw LG at LAIC, like, holy, they looked so dialed in. It was unbelievable, right? But you know, Dupesnacks talked about this on broadcast. I feel like we talk about this a lot, and it's the real story of North America, that for whatever reason, North America is the hardest against itself. You know, like LG wins worlds but can't beat TTV. That's like the kind of like games that we have in NA. So I absolutely love to see it. I'm really excited for the Juicers, of course.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for LG because I still think, even though they lost to the Juicers, like if I had to put my money on a team winning worlds right now, from watching enough ACL and everything, I would say it would be LG. I think they are unbelievable. But it is, you know, these are moments that teams have to really start to take an inventory of like where they are at and how they are performing in these games. They got out drafted so hard, just like what happened at regionals against TTV. TTV just had an answer to their Zoroark Comfey. I'm like talking seasons ago now, but they had an answer to their Zoroark Comfey. And then we kind of flash forward to right now, and it felt like the Juicers really had their number. They had some great counter picks, and then they stole away some big comfort picks from members of Luminosity. And then the final game, like Luminosity's picking Scyther, and you know it's over.
Okay, yeah. That is true. It is kind of remarkable that I think is the general consensus, and I think it's very true. The drafts from Luminosity Gaming in the grand final specifically were pretty strange, especially as the games went on. It felt like it sort of started to spiral a little bit, but I would say that was one of their, if not their biggest strength at LAIC. I thought they were out drafting every team on that stage. And then all of a sudden for it to be kind of exposed in a weird way. I don't know if it was maybe pressure, maybe a little bit of infighting that leads to some of these decisions. I don't know. It's tough to point a finger exactly when there's so many intangible stuff from behind the scenes. But I mean, credit to Orange Juicers for finding a few different recipes that worked and really sticking to it. I think they had a couple of players that stepped up way more than I've seen them in a long time. Like Zugrug in particular, I think looks like the best he's been since that North American regional final. I think he, didn't have the best performance at Worlds, but all of a sudden a huge step up. I think OG came out of nowhere and looked really, really good on a amazing comfort pick for him in the Garchomp. So that was pretty sick. But yeah, Bridget, any thoughts on the grand finals from you in North America specifically?
Definitely just big agree on everything you guys are saying. I thought Kratos was deep in his notebook. I don't know what they were cooking, but they were pulling out all the stops. I thought the Mew ban was pretty genius. I think they were just really good at exposing LG's weak points, especially when it came to draft. Because I do feel like LG has like a relatively big mon pool, but you can definitely tell what their comfort picks are. Like the Snorlax, like Slash and Zug are both incredible Lax players, and it just seemed to be like doing so much work for both of them.
Yeah.
So, like Zug talked about in his interview, just like seeing that being a big part of their strategy and like making sure to prioritize it and take it away, especially in the middle of a tourney, because obviously they were not doing that in winners finals. Like they didn't see
They tried some draft stuff. They did pick Greedent.
Okay.
Attacker Greedent.
Zugrug did say they made Flareon stand the range, guys. They said no more melees, buddy. But
yeah, I think Kratos also mentioned that moment in the interview too.
Oh my God.
They were all like, "We're not picking Greedent again. Don't worry."
Well, apparently he'd been practicing it.
I feel like some teams are pretty good at causing chaos. And I do know Flareon's is great at, has a really chaotic pick that he played in solo queue for a long time, which was Jungle Hoopa. And he's amazing at invading. He's like really good at that, but his Greedent really isn't there, especially when you see how dialed in he is on some of these attackers. Like the kid was on fire with an ice Pokemon, ironically. So yeah, I do think they had 2 drafts that were, in my opinion, catastrophically bad. Like they should have surrendered at 5 minutes. The Greedent draft was insane. And what was the draft where they decide not to pick A9, give it to LG, proceed to pick insanely bad Pokemon? Like that was a really rough draft for them.
Yeah,
I think it was like game 2 of set 2 or something.
Yeah, it was strange. It definitely feels like Luminosity Gaming, and I've said this about Fennel as well for a long time, is that obviously they are an incredibly smart team. Their drafts are a big component, but it does feel like despite all of that, their best asset is still they are some of the best mechanical players in the entire world. In Luminosity Gaming and on Fennel, like to some of these top teams that you think about. And it feels like some members of Orange Juicer specifically are stepping up to the plate in that category. Maybe we're not world ranking or best in the entire globe, but like to the level of we played against these players for 4 years at this point. We're starting to learn their habits. I'm learning how to shut these things down. And obviously the opposite side of that coin is true. So it makes for great grand finals. And we actually had that in literally every region. I don't know if this has ever happened. It was kind of remarkable, but for the first tournament of the year, OC, EU, North America, Latin America North, Latin America South, and Brazil, that's every region, went to a bracket reset in grand finals. Like every single time the team coming out of losers had the gumption, let's call it, to reset the bracket and push this thing. And I've been trying to rack my head around this. Is it the advantage of like having your choice of draft side if you're coming in, but usually it doesn't go that. Usually it's whoever's ranked higher or seeded higher. So the person on the winner's side should have choice. So that kind of goes out the window a little bit. It like, where is this advantage stemming from? And honestly, I really do feel like it's at the point where we're at the life cycle of competitive Unite, where these teams just know each other sometimes too well, and they're just going to be trading. Like, they're going to win one game, they're going to lose the next one. It's just going to go back and forth and be these knockdown, drag-out brawl kind of things. And that was true in every single region, which was which was pretty exciting. Spragels, did you get the chance to check out any of the, or just like see any of the other regions or anything like that? Or were you just kind of honed in on NA all weekend?
I got to watch a lot of EU.
Okay.
Because for whatever reason before a broadcast, like I can't sleep. I think it's just my brain goes, I have to wake up at this certain time.
Mm-hmm.
So then my brain also goes, well then great, wake up at 3 a.m., 3:30, 4 a.m., 4:30. So I was up watching a ton of EU, and I thought that was pretty exciting. Like some really exciting stuff was happening over there in EU. But no, I have not gotten a time to see any other region. Oh, and I saw a hair of OC as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't really get to see much of OC. Bridget, how about you? Did you have time to track any other regions?
I watched EU Grands. Obviously watched as much of NA. I think I watched all of NA. I had Brazil on a little bit, but I wasn't very much paying attention. I watched LATAM. I think I just watched their winners finals. I don't know if I watched their reset grands stuff.
Okay.
And I watched a little of LATAM South.
Okay. So I had the chance to tune in to all three of those. I didn't get to watch too much of OC. EU, obviously, I watched the grand finals and everything. We were just sitting there waiting for our broadcast, so I was able to spectate that, no problem. But I was able to take a good look at a few of those other regions. I mean, credit to having lands in some of these regions. I feel so much more invested in like Brazil's storylines after doing an event in LAIC. And oh my word, if anybody else feels at all like that, watch the broadcast for Brazil. DreamMax loses one of their games in the open qualifier the day prior. So they start the day in losers bracket and they make the entire run all the way through losers, and they win their losers finals. They beat like exiled team like along the way, like some other notable teams, and they make it to grands against Tuzi, and it is like one of the most intense grand finals that goes the full distance I've ever seen. It was wild. I mean, I know there's a lot of emotion between those teams and those players. I mean, if we're talking about how Orange versus LG want to beat each other, I think these two teams might take that desire even higher. But it was wild to watch. That was such a fun grand final. If you want to watch some crazy drafts, Latin America South has got you covered. Gengar won a remarkable amount of games in that set. It was pretty insane. And then in Latin America North, another really, really exciting matchup. I love the way the LATAM North teams play. I've always said it a lot. And a lot of Aegislash randomly in that grand final. So some interesting stuff emerging. Obviously, we got a few players who are specialists on certain Pokemon, so we're starting to see that show up. But that was really cool. But speaking of which, let's dive into some stats, shall we? Should we get nerdy on the competitive Unite broadcast?
I don't know. I think people here are pretty casual viewers. They might not understand some of this.
Gosh, or are they in the wrong place? Okay, let's start with EU, I think. So we got the poker stats. Huge shout out to Poker, as always, for always building these after every single set. So these statistics come only from day 2, so the top 8 of every single region. Let's talk about EU first. Trevenant at the top of the leaderboard with an 82% pick rate. This was one of those Pokemon that was played in a couple of different roles. It was tank, but it was also top path, but it did not break that 40% win rate mark. I think a lot of people like to see just below, but 39%. Keep an eye on Umbreon. This is one of those interesting Pokemon from region to region, I think, that is we need to watch out for narratively here. But 19 picks, so second most picked Pokemon in the region with a 67.9% pick rate, but a 63.2% win rate. So Umbreon doing extremely well in EU. Also, I think this is the region with by far the highest Hoopa pick rate. EU loving Hoopa at 16 times total, 57% pick rate with a 75% win rate. Absolutely crushing it. Actually, technically a higher win rate than Psyduck, who did get picked 8 times, but I mean, double the sample size, something, but still, 16 times and a 75% win rate. Very, very big standout. Highest on the graphic. Interesting there, but that's kind of the support and tank core of the stats. Any other stats that kind of jump out to all of you that we think is worth talking about in EU?
I'll let Bridget go first.
Cool.
I was gonna say it speaks volumes how high Hoopa and Blissey are, especially in EU, where I feel like they love Eldegoss for it to be so low and also have a pretty low win rate. It had about a 40% pick rate, a 45% win rate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it really feels like it is a Hoopa Blissey support meta
Mm-hmm.
with, I actually think, obviously I think Mew support is excellent as well. I think Mew is best suited with the light bulb on its head.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's opportunity for other attacking supports, but
Okay, I'm glad you brought this up.
I was surprised, especially with LG. I'm surprised Otter didn't turn to other, I guess unconventional supports,
Yeah.
like Espeon, or I feel like Pikachu like fell off like so hard this tournament. I guess it just gets like really stat checked by Mirai and Mew, but
I suppose.
I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting that we didn't really see any like pivots.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Spragels? Do you think there's any more non-healing supports that are obviously not being shown? Because I think realistically, this tournament was only Mew. Was the only Pokemon that saw representation there at all, and a little bit less. I think we saw more like non-EXP share Mew popping up here and there, more than we've seen in the past. So, thoughts on kind of this EXP share attacker trend already starting to fade a little bit here in the first tournament?
Yeah, I mean, I think teams are going to kind of like flex around with some of this stuff. Obviously, it's great to have an actual support on your team, or Umbreon playing support, which it essentially is when it's playing, a Wish build. When you take a look at things like, we did see Sylveon with a light bulb on its head. I think you could see some other ones. You could definitely see A9 with a light bulb on its head.
Sure.
There are a few other options. I know some regions have tried Cinderace and stuff like that.
Mewtwo, we saw a little bit of
Mewtwo.
Mewtwo, yeah, you could definitely see Mewtwo with that. I think some of the more interesting stats here, like, I can't believe Blissey's win rate is that low. I don't know what's happening in EU. That's insane. Because for me, I think Blissey's probably the best support in the game. I think Bliss Assistance is just unbelievably broken.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe Psyduck maybe is a little more broken. I guess
Hoopa Unite's pretty broken too. Like
Hoopa Unite's pretty dang good. Umbreon Unite's actually truly busted. So
Umbreon just checks Blissey in a lot of ways, right? Like I think the natural predator in some ways.
Literally.
I think you're exactly right. It fully basically cancels it right there. Mm-hmm. So that is a problem.
Especially
I'm
if it's
surprised we don't see Absol on here. Weren't we watching a decent amount of Absol games?
Yeah, Utah was.
Yeah, Utah was bringing it out. I think that was one of the only players that was. I don't know if Wrecker was on any Absol. Yeah, Wrecker, where's your Absol? He's in chat right now, so I'm asking him.
we didn't see 6 Absol games. It feels like we probably did, but maybe not. I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, unfortunately, maybe it tied with Garchomp or something. I'm not too sure, but did not see it there. Let's see. We do have the most used by rule. Thought Poker used to have ban on this too, but maybe not. Okay, yeah. So this is pick and win. Snorlax, I think, is one that is interesting to watch region per region. Miraidon, I think there's no doubt in anyone's mind anymore. It is the truth. I mean,
yes,
42.9% pick rate, but 66.7% win rate. Like, I do think it's the best attacker, and I don't really think it's close. Yeah, A9, Inteleon, Mew, Pikachu are probably the other, Pokemon in that core, but they all lose to Miraidon. It feels like it's just so unbelievably strong. I think it's probably one of the reasons we're starting to see more people play melee Pokemon bot path just to try to contend with it. Be like, well, Electro Drift into me, I dare you. I'll punch you. Feels like maybe where the natural thing is going. But okay, before we make any more assumptions, let's jump to another region. We talked about EU. Let's move on to North America. So Umbreon again at the top of the pick rate chart. Well, I guess it was Trevenant in EU, which is a bit of a surprise. I don't think Trevenant even makes the graphic in NA.
I was just about to say there's not even a Trevenant on this page.
That is wild. So less than 7 times chosen in North America. Umbreon with a 76.9% pick rate, but a 35% win rate. Umbreon plummets in win rate in North America. Snorlax right behind that at 18. So interesting to see so many North American players picking up this Pokemon. 69.2% pick rate, but a 66.7% win rate. I do think the two maybe most notable Snorlax players in the region being Zugrug and Slash, who both won a lot. of their games. Makes, probably is helping out this win rate portion of the stats, but still not a huge surprise to see how well it's doing, but maybe a surprise to see how many times it's picked. Miraidon looks even better in North America. 46% win rate and an 83.3% win rate. Holy, that's ridiculous. Mew sits at about 50%. Other than that, Hoopa, again, 33.3% win rate. Blissey, 27.3% win rate. This Pokemon is getting exposed by Umbreon, I feel. It is wild. But sometimes I'm picking Umbreon and Blissey. I don't know. Blissey feels like it's getting exposed a little bit, it feels like. Okay, any thoughts on North America? We'll go Spragels first this time.
Boy, I mean, looking at this, it is really interesting. The one unfortunate thing about stats like this, they're very cool, don't get me wrong, but it is highly dictated by the good teams. There aren't enough numbers here because you'd be like, wow, look at that win rate on Dodrio. It's like, yeah, only like 3 people know how to play it, and when they played it, they did well.
Right.
But you do learn a lot from what is picked a lot, what is banned a lot, and what is doing well.
Yeah, it feels like the top 5 or 6 Pokemon in the graphic are by far the most relevant in terms of these conversations. Yeah,
but also, like you said, you've got 2 top teams that both loved Snorlax. So of course Snorlax is crushing it. I'm a little surprised to see Leafy on that low when you see in EU it's up at like 70%.
Oh, the win rate. I see. I was like,
the win rate.
Big. 47%. Yeah. Makes sense.
And then you see Eldegoss at 90%.
Yeah.
That is insane.
I don't even know what to make of some numbers like that. It just feels like lots of things were banned out, and LD ended up working pretty well.
Is it that, or is Eldegoss cracked? Like, I don't know.
It was all Roland.
Well, Roland did very well.
I do think LD is quite good, but man, I guess it's just a few games. 11 times. Wow.
11 games, yeah, where Hoopa and Blissey were picked 15, but Blissey also at 11. But yeah, Eldegoss with a 90.9% winner. It probably means it lost one of those games, right?
Literally,
out of that, out of its 11 games. Okay, thank you, mathematicians. That's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But yeah, it is a kind of absurd stat. I mean, outpacing Miraidon in terms of win rate. That's wild. Bridget, are you gonna be picking up only Eldegoss in ranked these days? What's going on?
I do, if I can't get the duck and I feel I can't force my team to let me play EXP Share Pikachu or Espeon, I have been defaulting to either Blissey or LD. LD, I just feel like is so much, it's like my go-to solo queue support pick.
Okay.
Oh my god. I feel like you can actively support really well, but I have more control over the game than Blissey sometimes, so it's kind of nice.
That's true. Yeah, Palafox, I believe the Eldegoss build was... Actually, we saw a decent amount of Cotton Guard this tournament.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of roll and play at that. I mean, you kind of go both.
Never Leaf Tornado is just the...
Yeah, unfortunately.
Obviously.
Unless you're playing against, like, Tyranitar, relevant. Garchomp at 10 picks with a 50% win rate, by the way. I think that was relatively the same in EU as well. Was also around 50%. Let's check. 66.7. So, yeah, Garchomp kind of sitting around the same. It did feel like a bit of a highlight Pokemon. Also in Asia, which we'll talk about very briefly, but we're running a little bit low on time, so we got to speed through these next couple pretty quick here. Latin America North, again, Umbreon tops another graphic with an 88.5% pick rate on this Pokemon, 23 times total, with a 56.5% win rate. Honestly, one of the more impressive stat lines is that it's picked so much, but it's still winning. Miraidon only at a 50% win rate, but it was also picked a ton, so you have to imagine teams are kind of trading with it. Blaziken actually outpacing, so interesting to see. We've seen a lot of tank and supports kind of be near the top of this graphic. We see the first support being Hoopa at 4th on the graphic in total. It's not too much you can draw from that, but the potential is maybe we're seeing more support bans in Latin America North than damage bans, which normally we're seeing a lot of damage in North America and EU be the banning directions, but except for Psyduck, it's always banned. More Slowbro here than anywhere else. Was shocked to see the lack of Slowbro, honestly, in a couple of regions. Feel like still really, really solid Pokemon. But yeah, okay. Any thoughts on LATAM North?
I think Blaziken's insanely good. I'm surprised we're not seeing it more.
The only region that thinks so, apparently, is Latin America North.
It's just one of those things. Whenever it's around, you can't secure an objective. That's very valuable. But I do recognize there's so many good picks. So I was not wanting to play with that necessarily. But man, I just feel like it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree. One thing that I noticed, and before the tournament, I was saying this a bunch, I expected to see way more Urshifu this tournament, specifically Dark Bear. I know, thought it was seeing so much success, but in every region, it's near the bottom, and it's doing fine. North America, it broke 57% win rate, but everywhere else, it's below 50, it's a low pick rate. I actually expected to see way more of this Pokemon, but we did not see it.
I think the top path meta is pretty interesting, but maybe it's because I was watching a lot of OJ. Sneaky and I watched some of their games on Saturday during the qualifiers, and obviously I got to see them a lot on Sunday, and I was just like, Garchomp is the truth. I just like, maybe it's just really good into this meta. Like, I know it's really good into Blissey, and obviously it loved having a Blissey with it, which seems to be typically... It was either in games more so than not, if not being banned. So I don't know. I was very impressed with the chomps I was seeing, at least in Europe and in NA.
This is an interesting stat line. In Latin America North, Garchomp and Zacian both at the exact same stat line. 10 picks, 38.5% of the pick rate, and then 50% win rate. Jake, you're going in a draft. Would you rather have the Sword Dog or the Land Shark on your team in the top lane?
After watching the tournaments, I think I'd go with Garchomp. But I do think it's weird. I think Zacian is no, I would take Blaziken. I kind of think Zacian is better, but I think Garchomp is doing better. I don't know how to I don't know how to square this in my brain.
I hate stats.
I hate this. This is ridiculous. This is the best. 36%, 20%. But yeah, I really like the dragon combo catch. Yeah. And having an unstoppable Unite move after it really does shut down a considerable amount of squishy Pokemon. So I think that could be pretty massive, and I think it's probably better for a lot of comps.
All right, let's go. Drain Crown enjoyers, rise up. All right. You. Okay, last pick. Brazil. I mean, welcome to the world of the wacky. They let Psyduck through 6 times, everybody. And it did get a 66.7% win rate. Snorlax is sitting at 80% win rate here.
Wow.
But maybe, I think the wildest stat here, 2 of them actually, at around 20% win rate. Umbreon topping yet another chart, 24 picks in total, 21.7% win rate. So now we're 2 regions that are great at Umbreon, 2 regions that are not good at Umbreon. Wild to see Umbreon at 100% pick rate. Every single game in the top 8 qualifiers of Brazil had an Umbreon played. Insane. But had a terrible win rate. And Darkrai, 25% win rate. I think that is one thing that I think through both LAIC and this tournament has kind of been proven. Darkrai has been exposed competitively. It is not as strong as one would think. Am I off base there? Do you guys agree with? Oh, Jake, disagree?
Well, it's tough. I agree with you, and I think the nerfs brought it back down to earth a little bit. But I also think I've noticed this with just UCS in general. These players are so slow to pick up new Pokemon, and Darkrai being broken, you run into this horrible situation where this thing is insanely good, so everyone bans it. So no one is getting a chance to practice with this thing, and then they finally get it, and they're like, I kind of know how to play it, but their flow on Lucario is godlike, and their flow on Darkrai is like you'd be better playing something else. So I think it ran into recent nerfs and no experience on this thing. I do think when I saw LG and stuff play it, it looked a lot better than watching some of these other teams play it for sure.
All right, Bridget, what are your thoughts on that? Is Darkrai a fraud, or is it the players themselves?
Let me be clear. I was
That's
saying
That's
that
what he said.
No, I'm saying the top players in this game are garbage. They don't know how to
Okay.
play.
I'm
and they
glad we're
can't-
clarifying.
They can't even win with a broken Pokemon. I'm just trying to make it clear what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, let me be clear.
Okay.
I am definitely not super high on Darkrai Stonks after this weekend. I definitely see where Spragels is coming from. Like, when are you gonna get to play this thing? Like, maybe in scrims if you like handshaked to try to practice it, I guess, but definitely not on ladder. At least probably not until like pretty recently.
Okay.
I mean, but whenever I see it on ladder, I'm not having a good time. So I don't know if it's kind of like a Gengar where it can be like a solo queue stomper, but maybe
Okay.
in comp it's not quite as horrifying, or it's just more counterable. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly where its place will be, or if anyone will kind of pick it up and adopt it and try to make it work.
Interesting. Yeah. It feels a bit yet to be seen, I think. Like, I think what it's going to take is we need someone to dominate with this Pokemon in a tournament. And then it's going to be like, oh, okay, actually, maybe this thing can go crazy. We'll see. Yeah, Brazil with maybe the most wonky stats out of them all. Mimikyu at 16 picks total. I know North America was banning Mimikyu a lot against a lot of teams, so I guess why we saw it a little bit lower every time that Trainer got it into a game, we saw it. But okay, we only got a little bit of time left. Let's jump over to the Asia Champions League. We've been giving little updates here on the podcast about where things are at, but let's give a bit of an update in Japan. Currently, Fennel leads. However, this last weekend, they did have kind of a poor performance and they lost their first round against, I believe it was Insomnia, who is Obion's team. They lost that best of 3, so they were basically eliminated in the first round, and Axes went on to win the whole thing. Axes doing pretty well. They have very consistent performance, and Reject kind of right behind them as well, and Zeta Division in 4th place. Feel like we're already kind of starting to say this is the top 4 teams in Japan right now. Insomnia, Yoshimoto, Nagoya, and Sengoku all seem solid, but it feels like this is a clear front-running top 4. For whenever I've got to check out the Japan side of things. I got to watch a little bit of India, watch of Chris's restream of their grand finals and stuff. I've been keeping up with SEA as well. But we only have stats from Japan. So let's take a look at Pokemon stats, because that's what we've been talking about. I wanted to scroll down just to make sure these were updated for week 3, and they are, because Darkrai was available this last week. Week number 1, they did not have Darkrai available, and not Serena, and not Psyduck. But all 3 were available in this week's tournament. So this is overall for the whole of the ACL so far. Blissey is the most picked Pokemon, with Urshifu right behind it. And I think this is why I thought we would see a lot more of this Pokemon. Urshifu currently has a 58.5% win rate in the entirety of the Asia Champions League in Japan. It is doing extremely well over there. Where I was very shocked by. Blaziken also getting a lot of picks. Not as good of a win rate, but still a solid one. Mimikyu at a 58.8% win rate. So a lot of Trick Room believers out there. Miraidon doing quite well. Snorlax over here with 73% win rate as well. So, man, this Snorlax, it just feels like it is absolutely crushing right now.
Yeah, dude. I mean, yeah. It had like 2 or maybe 3 rounds of buffs over the course of a year. And there are just some metas where a heavy slam into a yawn is a perfect setup, or a heavy slam into a block is an unbelievable play. So I think it's really cool to see Snorlax back. And it does feel like with less Pokemon diving, it's weird. The more Pokemon that dive, the better Slowbro is. The more Pokemon that sort of play at like a middle range, Snorlax feels like it does a lot better because it's able to like get in there or even far away,
It feels really good versus attackers for sure.
Really good. Yeah, insanely good against attackers, but also pretty good against some of these all-rounders too, it seems like. It just seems to be handling things really well, which is cool.
I think we're also not in a rip meta, and I think Snorlax goes up a little bit more when we're more of a team fight centric meta game. Yeah. Like, when we're in a rip meta, things like even Blastoise, or Lapras, or Slowbro, who have a lot of crowd control in their kit, seem a little bit stronger in the situation. Snorlax can, but I feel like Snorlax's big value is in team fights, like being able to set them up, peel, disengage. Like, I don't know, Snorlax really has everything available there, so cool to see it doing well. Yeah, any thoughts on kind of the top of this leaderboard here, Bridget?
Not particularly. I do feel like my eyes are open to the Snorlax after this weekend and seeing just how good it was across a lot of different regions. It also looked like it was banned quite a bit, actually, from that chart you were showing us, Zoinks. Like, Japan seems to rate it really high, and
yeah, I also, I'm sorry I pulled away from the stat screen. I will just mention them quickly because we do got to wrap up the show here pretty quick. But Crustle at the top of the, well, technically tied with Psyduck at 22 bans apiece. In 3 days of single elimination tournaments, somehow Crustle has emerged as one of the biggest ban rate Pokemon. In its 11 games, it is a 54% win rate. Psyduck has been played, and remember, this is only 1 day of eligibility, so one single elimination top 8. Had 1 game, and it won that 1 game. So, hey. Let's go Psyduck. Someone let it through. I bet the casters were losing their mind, excited for it. So, cool. All right, well, draw whatever conclusions you may from all the numbers we just ran over. I feel like we're up on Snorlax, maybe a little down on Blissey. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know if I've convinced anybody of that yet.
I do think Umbreon is one of the most volatile stocks in all of Pokemon. It's weird because I would be really curious to find out the builds. So, like, from a region that picked it 100% of the time, is this a majority Snarl or is this a majority Wish? Like, how are teams playing this, and what does that look like? Because I do think Umbreon fully like plays as 2 different Pokemon, almost 3 different Pokemon, right? Because of Mean Look. But I think Foul Play Snarl is a tank, and Mean Look or Foul Play Wish is a support. And I'm wondering how that's broken out. I'd be really curious to find that out. I'd also be really curious to see which Blissey build is doing better, because it actually looked like every time teams were picking Safeguard Helping Hand, they were kind of cooking.
It looked way better.
It's good. Yeah. It's really good. I'm a believer.
It also just feels good. I don't know. When your damage dealers are just feeling way better about how they're playing, sometimes that's honestly worth it enough. But.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's going to bring us to the end of our episode. A bit shorter one today. Wild that Wonder Chef's not here to see us end on time. But whatever. It is what it is. Spragels, is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No. If you like Unite stuff, I make it under Spragels. If you happen to like Pocket stuff, I make it under Spragels Pocket. If you like Hot Pockets, I have Spragels Hot Pocket as well.
Yeah, you got that locked up? That's sick.
Yeah, I got it set up. I just eat Hot Pot. The whole time we'd be going...
and they're way too hot.
They're way too hot.
It's the best Tim Robinson I could do.
The videos need to be 8 minutes long, so it's just me blowing in a Hot Pocket for a long time, then me going, good. Not pepperoni good, but good.
Can't wait for the clickbait thumbnail where it's like, they're too cold this time? All right.
Whoa.
Bridget, how about you? Anything to plug?
No, I'm just chilling. Excited for more Unite. That's about it.
Cool. Yeah. All right, everybody, go out there and play Snorlax, Eldegoss, and enjoy Season 1 meta as it returns. Maybe Cramorant's up next. Who knows? The only Pokemon not played at LAIC. Wild stuff. All right. We'll see you all next time, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.